What's happening, YouTube? Welcome back to a 4-player fixed cards game. In this game, I'm playing against a beginner who is blue, a intermediate who is purple, and a grandmaster who is the orange player. This game was organized in the Risk Forever Discord server, so I will be sharing the link in the comments section if you want to join in the next game. So back to the gameplay. In this game, I'm beginning by just making alliances with the other players, as I normally do in fixed cards, because one of the most important aspects of fixed cards is diplomacy, and if you don't have a good relationship with another player, it's very likely that they can attack you and ruin the game for both of you if they let their emotions get the best of them. So try not to attack anyone unless it's absolutely necessary. Like, for example, if someone is becoming too strong to where they have more troops than the rest of the players, then that's the only situation where it makes sense to attack someone. In other situations in the game, it's not a good idea to attack just because you want to attack. You should always have a reason behind every attack in fixed cards. So in this current board state, I'm trying to capture Europe. However, the blue player is not allowing me to do so. The purple player already has Australia, blue has South America, and orange looks like he's going for North America. So if orange captures North America and I capture Europe, then we will be perfectly balancing each other out, and this will make it such that the blue player will not want to attack me anymore, because it's not necessary for him to attack me, given that the orange player would be getting the same amount of troops as me in that situation. So instead of waiting for orange to capture North America, blue took over Africa in order to get the same number of troops as me. However, the orange player wasn't patient because he actually decided to blitz blue's troops in North America without even waiting for blue to fortify his troops back. If you're wondering why I decided to attack the blue player into Africa and South America, the reason for that is I just want the other players to actually focus on fully taking out the blue player. Because in 4-player fixed cards, you can actually team up with 3 of the players in order to take out the 4th player who is not needed for the balance of the game. And that's actually a valid strategy that a lot of people use, where the strongest players tend to team up against the weakest player and then take them out eventually once it's worth it and the situation presents itself. So once the strongest players team up against the weakest player and decide to fully take them out of the game, then it becomes a 3-player situation where one of the strongest players is now the weakest player. However, none of the other 2 remaining players are stronger than the rest of the players combined. However, I decided to actually change my plans. Originally, I was thinking about teaming up with orange and purple to try to take out blue, but I realized that the orange player is actually becoming quite stronger, holding both of the Americas, so that strategy to focus on the blue player wouldn't really work out too well. So at this point in the game, I decided to team up with blue and purple in order to attack the orange player. Once I'm strong enough to afford doing so, I will use some of my troops so that I can weaken the orange player's border, but not fully take it out, because I want for either blue or purple, or even both, of them to actually help me out, because I don't want to do the dirty work of attacking the strongest player all by myself, as this could make orange extremely angry at me, and that could go wrong for me. So currently you can see that I'm using the European turtle strategy, where I have a really big army in the center of Europe, in Northern Europe, and then I also have a separate counterattacking army in Scandinavia to protect against any possible invasion from the orange player. So I will continue to build up my troops and send attack requests to both blue and purple to attack the orange player, so that I'm ready and we are all ready to team up against the strongest player in this situation. And that's another strategy that you can use in fixed cards, where the weaker players can actually team up against the strongest player in order to make sure that they don't become too powerful. So I'm continuing to build up my troops, and I actually fortified my troops to Ukraine so that my army is ready to attack orange, or possibly try to take out the purple player from the game. If purple does not have a set, then that's another possibility. So basically, I have two different plans in mind. Either I can try to team up with the orange player to deal with and fully take out either blue or purple, or I can team up with the weaker players, blue and purple, in order to attack orange. And because the purple player had a set, I decided to blitz 20 troops into the orange player to weaken his border. Now, the logic behind this attack was I wanted the blue player to help me invade orange into North America and potentially even into South America, depending on the blue player. However, the blue player did not go with that option, and he did not actually help me out deal with orange. So even after I decided to attack the orange player in an attempt to try to invade him into North America, I'm still the second strongest player, and I decided to invade blue into Africa, which unleashed his main army so that he could potentially attack orange. But instead of that, he chose to attack me only into Europe. The reason why I decided to attack blue was because I wanted to coordinate with the orange player to try to take him out. And I also wanted to attack blue because potentially that would mean that he could go through me in order to invade the orange player. So that attack was twofold. However, none of those options actually panned out for me, as instead of invading orange, the blue player simply invaded me into Europe. And in addition to that, the orange player decided not to attack blue. So at this point in the game, I decided to become a little bit more passive by moving out of Europe and allowing blue to try to capture it. If the orange player actually allows that, which it doesn't look like he will. Now, I still haven't lost sight of my original plan, which was to try to team up against orange, being that he was the strongest player, and he still is the strongest player, currently holding both of the Americas, while blue is holding Africa and purple has Australia. So that is why I decided to manual roll orange into North America, weakening his army but not fully taking it out, because I want for the blue player to actually help me out, being that he's after me, so that I'm not doing all the work. I don't want to weaken myself so much that I become the weakest, and then the rest of the players just decide to turn on me and then take me out, being that I'm the weakest. So before my turn, I actually sent the attack request to blue to attack orange. And throughout this game, I've been trying to communicate with him to do this. And finally, blue decided that this was the right moment to help me deal with orange. And at this point, the orange player is not even guarding North America very well, which allows purple to come into the action to restore the balance of the game and make sure that orange doesn't become too powerful. He actually ends up invading him, getting some very favorable manual rolls, and then winning the 6 against 2. So at this point in the game, I decided to capture Europe, fortifying all of my troops to Northern Europe, sending a lot of thumbs up and heart emojis to the rest of the players, just to try to make sure that I can successfully hold it, especially since I've already attacked orange a lot and weakened myself a lot. I'm relying on the rest of the players to not decide to betray me and invade me, since I'm the weakest player in this situation. Fortunately for me, my relations with the other players are actually good enough to the point where they don't want to attack me. Even the orange player chose not to attack me, which was surprising, even after I attacked him so many times in the earlier stages of the game. So now, after being aggressive and teaming up with the blue player and purple in order to deal with the strongest player, orange, I can finally just go back to camping in Europe and just being passive, because it's not necessary for me to attack anyone else. And like I've said before, you should only ever attack someone if you have a valid reason to do that. In this case, the reason for attacking orange was because he was the strongest player, and the situation was where blue was holding Africa, purple was holding Australia, and I wasn't even holding a continent. So in that situation, it made sense for all of us to team up against orange. And it looks like the purple player is continuing to deal with the orange player nicely for us by doing a lot of manual attacks in order to weaken the orange player's border. So after seeing what the purple player was willing to do in doing some manual attacks against orange, I decided to also team up with purple against orange, which will improve my relations with purple as well as the blue player, because currently we're still teaming up against orange because orange refuses to not go back into South America, and he's trying to be super aggressive and greedy by trying to hold both of the Americas, which at this point I would say is a mistake, seeing that the other players in this game are willing to attack him. If I was the orange player in this situation, I would definitely choose to fortify back to South America, and that's exactly what it looks like he's doing. Because on his turn, the orange player chose to fortify back his 50 troops army back into South America, which was a smart choice because he saw that purple, blue, and I were all teaming up against him. So the smartest choice would be just to become more passive so that he can draw the attention away from him. And that's another strategy for fixed cards, is you can become more passive and you don't necessarily have to hold a lot of stuff. The advantage of being passive in Risk is you can actually draw the attention away from yourself, and then players can start focusing more on each other. But you don't want to be too passive, or else if one player becomes way too powerful and you continue to stay passive even though they're getting more troops than the other players combined, that would be a huge mistake for the balance of the game, because the strongest player would just get a very easy victory, being that you're not helping the other weak players to help deal with the strongest player. So that is the advantage of being passive in this game, is that you draw the attention away from the other players. But the disadvantage is if you become too passive, then you can allow the strongest player just to get a very easy victory if you don't help deal with him properly. So at this stage in the game, the purple player, I think, had to leave the game for some reason. And whatever the case was, he was replaced by the bot. So now it has become a 3-player fixed card situation, with orange holding Australia, me holding South America, and blue holding Africa, while the bot is occupying Asia and making it very difficult for orange to expand and really do much in this game. If Orange's troops in North America and Europe are cleared out by the players or by this bot, then Orange will essentially become trapped in Australia, which is really good for Blue and me, because then the Orange player will have very little influence on the game. And in order to prevent that from happening, the orange player would need to actually try to take out the bot. And as you can see, this bot is actually causing problems already. The blue player must properly defend against it in order to make sure that it doesn't attack him into Africa, taking down one of his main armies, which would be really good for orange and I, but that would be devastating for blue. So at this point, the orange player was trying to jokingly try to hold North America, but that was very unrealistic if that was his real intention, because getting North America while I'm holding South America and he's already holding Australia, while he's also not even protecting North America, is very foolhardy if he thinks that he will be able to hold it. And of course, I decided to invade him. So at this stage in the game, one of my best options would be to potentially expand and capture North America so that I can have more troops than the blue player and orange combined by getting more territories than them. However, the blue player actually chose to capture Europe, which was an interesting decision, especially because the bot is right next to blue, which means that it could potentially invade him into either Africa or Europe. So it was a little bit risky, but I would say it was a pretty good decision, because it will allow blue to start getting an advantage over the other players. So I decided to capture North America in order to start balancing out blue, but I also decided not to defend my borders, instead placing almost all of my troops in Northwest territory. This is a very passive way to hold North America, because you have a counter-attacking army there in North America tucked behind your borders without risking the threat of being annihilated by that army. So basically, I'm trying to be very passive with my allies and not really pressure them too much. In the meantime, this bot is causing havoc across the board. It has already invaded the blue player into Africa, as I predicted it would. And Blue took this chance to blitz a lot of purple's troops, leaving purple almost fully taken out. At this point, orange actually chose to try to attack me into North America, but was unsuccessful on the attack. It was an interesting choice. I think his main goal in trying to attack me, even though the chances were in his favor, he could still have lost that, and he did lose that. The reason why he tried to do that was, I think he wanted for the blue player to start teaming up with him on me. And that's exactly what happened. The blue player decided at this point to attack me into North America. So at this point, it's very clear that orange and blue have made an alliance, and they are working together to try to deal with me, which is a pretty interesting choice, especially since I'm actually making the same as the blue player. So it's perfectly fine for the balance of the game that I can hold both of the Americas, as blue is holding Africa and Europe, meaning that he's getting just the same number of troops as me. Nevertheless, I think it was a good idea for orange to try something, for him to try to team up with blue. Even though I'm not overpowering the game, I just think it was a smart choice just to try something new instead of just continuing to be passive and turtle in Australia. So the orange player's plan to team up with blue so far hasn't really worked that well. The blue player did decide to attack me. However, after that, the blue player is yet to invade me once again. So on the last turn, as well as on this turn, I actually chose not to get a card because this bot is preventing me from getting cards. And I am making sure that my army on Alaska is actually bigger than the bot's army in Kamchatka, or else it could potentially attack me. And on this turn, it was very interesting for the orange player to decide to fully take out the bot, losing a lot of troops. However, it was smart because he did not actually break the balance of the game. And as long as the balance of the game is sustained and no singular player is making more troops than the rest or has already more troops than the other players combined, then that means that all of the remaining players have equal chances to win the game. So at this point, the blue player made a nice choice by unleashing the orange player's biggest army, which means that theoretically he could decide to use that against me. However, the orange player is by far the weakest, and while blue has 180 troops, I have 170. The orange player is trailing behind by around 60 troops, with roughly only 120 troops in total. So, being that the orange player is the weakest by far, it wouldn't make sense for him to do the attacks. It would make more sense for blue to initiate attacking another player. Now, this is a very key point in this game. I was able to manage to make the orange player attack blue by sending him an attack request. And another thing that probably made orange decide to do this is because blue actually fortified 7 troops next to my 26 troops army. So from the orange player's perspective, he has just seen that his attempt to work with blue in order to attack me was not a successful mission, because while the blue player did initially attack me, he did not continue to keep attacking me. So this time, the orange player decided that he should try allying with me instead to see how it will go differently. And differently than the blue player, I am committed to try helping the orange player with attacking blue, or at least making the impression that I'm going to help him attack the blue player. And if I attack the blue player enough, just enough to where orange thinks that I'm still on his side, but not too much to where the blue player becomes way too mad against me, then there is some chances where the blue player will become more angry with the orange player and then decide to not focus me as much. So I decided to manual attack the blue player's 6 troops, which were next to me, just to make it look like I'm siding with orange. But I also decided not to attack that specific territory. Instead, I chose to attack Japan instead of one of the other 3 territories in Asia. The reason for this is because had I attacked one of those 3 specific territories in Asia, then the blue player's 74 troops army would be unleashed to potentially attack me. So on the blue player's last turn, I noticed how he was showing that he would attack the orange player, but what I wasn't expecting was the blue player actually using his 20 troops in order to attack into the orange player. So I decided, why not follow this up by attacking the orange player once again, just to make the illusion that I'm siding with blue this time. Now, my 500 IQ play behind this is to jabait the blue player. What I mean by that is I want to make it look like the blue player can take out orange when he can't. I want to attack orange a lot, to the point where the blue player will think to take out orange when it's not possible for him to do so, because if he does that, then he will end up giving me the game. So I'm being extremely tactical with just how many troops I'm using to attack the orange player. On my turn, I noticed that I have 230 troops by turning in my set, while blue only has around 205. Another thing I noticed is that my army was fully unleashed, which means that in the end game, I will be able to get the attacking advantage because the blue player has a lot of smaller sized armies. So once it comes down to the end game, I will get the attacking advantage. Another thing that I noticed was on this turn, the orange player has 5 cards, which makes it look extremely appealing for blue just to fully take out orange and mistakenly lose the game. So after taking out orange, the blue player has 200 troops to my 210, plus he has 4 cards to my 1. However, like I said, all of his main armies are spread across because they are not in one army, meaning that I will get the advantage on some of these attacks. And that's exactly what happens. And another thing is his army in Australia is fully blocked from the rest of the map. This means that I can try to hold both of the Americas with only 3 borders to defend against. And another thing is his army in Australia is fully blocked, so he can't really do anything. And realizing this, the blue player decided to quit out of the game, forfeiting the game as he didn't have any chances left to win this. So that is how you can beat a grandmaster, by jabaiting an intermediate into trying to take out the Australian player when it wasn't worth it. I hope you found this video informational, and thanks for watching.